The old temple stood on the edge of a broken cliff, its stones blackened by time and war, its towers half fallen. Yet the people still came from every corner of the galaxy to see the weapon hidden inside. For the legends spoke of a blade that no alien could lift, no warrior could master, a weapon made from light and forged in the heart of a dying star. The blade of eternity. For centuries, proud alien clans had marched up the temple steps, one after another, covered in golden armor. Wings spread, tusks sharpened, scales glimmering, each declaring themselves worthy, each stepping before the altar, gripping the hilt with shaking hands, and each one failing. The sword remained cold, silent, and heavy. It burned the hands of those who lied. It refused the grip of those who came with greed. It would not rise for kings or generals. And so the temple became a place of shame as much as hope. The priests of the temple told the prophecy again and again. A voice from long ago carved into the walls. It said that when the galaxy was broken, when no ruler was strong enough, one would come who was different, one who did not belong to any alien clan. And when that one touched the blade, the galaxy itself would tremble. But no one believed the final part of the prophecy, for no alien was worthy. They said, then who could it be? When the human first stepped through the gates of the temple, laughter filled the air. The alien guards scoffed at his thin frame, his soft skin, his lack of horns or claws. Some called him prey, others called him fool. He wore no crown, no armor of gold. Only simple clothes dusty from travel, his eyes calm, his steps slow. Yet there was something in his gaze, a quiet strength, that the mockery could not break. He walked across the cracked stone floor, the torches flickering as if the air itself was holding its breath. He stopped before the altar, and the sword stood there, planted deep in its resting place, the hilt glowing faintly with blue fire. He reached out his hand, but before he could touch it, one alien shoved forward, a warrior with scales of iron and arms like tree trunks. He growled that a human was unworthy, that he, a son of warriors, would claim the blade instead. The crowd cheered as the scaled warrior wrapped both hands around the hilt. His muscles bulging, his teeth bared. He pulled with all his might. He roared so loud the walls shook, but the blade did not move, not even a finger's width. Sparks burned his skin. The weapon rejected him. He fell to his knees, gasping. His hands blistered and smoking. The crowd fell silent, their eyes now turning back to the human. The human did not boast, did not shout. He only placed one hand gently on the hilt. The air around him seemed to still, and then it happened. The blade pulsed with light. Bright and alive, the entire temple trembled, dust raining from the ceiling, the flames of the torches bent toward him as though bowing. Slowly, without effort, he lifted the blade. And for the first time in living memory, the weapon sang, a hum deep and powerful that echoed across the galaxy like a heartbeat. Aliens fell back, some in terror, some in awe. The priests dropped to their knees, whispering the words of the prophecy. No alien was worthy. But the human had gripped the blade, and in that moment the galaxy shook, though he did not yet know. It, armies light years away, stirred uneasily. Ancient machines hidden beneath alien soil awoke from their long slumber, and rulers in distant palaces felt a chill they could not explain. The human looked down at the sword in his hand, its glow reflected in his eyes. He had not come for power. He had not come for glory. He had come because something had pulled him, a voice in dreams, a whisper in his heart telling him to walk to this place. Now that whisper became a roar. The blade was alive. It had chosen him, and he could feel it breathing with him, waiting, guiding, ready to test him in battles he could not yet imagine. The crowd outside the temple did not know whether to kneel or to run. Some screamed that the end of days had begun. Others shouted that the Savior had come, But one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same. And it had all begun with one human, standing quietly before an ancient altar. Gripping the blade no alien could lift, as the hum of its light echoed into the dark stars under the burning skies of the alien city. Word spread faster than fire. The impossible had happened inside the ancient temple. The human had lifted the blade of eternity, a weapon that rejected every alien hand for centuries, and now that it rested in his grip, the galaxy itself seemed to shiver the moment the blade rose. A shockwave of energy shot outward, unseen yet deeply felt. It crossed stars, pierced empty void, and awakened things that had been asleep for ages. Old war machines hidden beneath. Alien deserts powered on, their eyes glowing red for the first time in thousands of years. Satellites, long dead, flickered alive, transmitting forgotten signals and in distant thrones. Rulers felt their blood run cold. Inside the temple, silence held the crowd. Every alien stared at the human as if seeing a ghost. The priests trembled, some whispering blessings, others afraid that prophecy had truly begun. The human himself stood still, the blade glowing in his hands. He had not trained for this. He had not asked for this, but now he carried a power that could reshape the stars outside. The news spread like thunder. Messengers ran, ships launched, transmissions raced across the void. Every empire, every clan, every rebel fleet heard the same words: the blade has chosen. And it chose a human. The laughter that once followed his kind now turned to fear and anger. On the far side of the galaxy, the High Council of the Voroth met in their crystal chamber. 12 alien lords with scaled faces and eyes like molten stone. They had tried for centuries to claim the sword for themselves. But each time, the blade burned them. Now they saw their ancient hopes stolen by an outsider. One lord slammed his claws against the table, vowing that the human must be captured. Another hissed that he must be destroyed before he gained strength. But one elder remained silent, his voice finally breaking the noise. If the blade accepts him, then killing him may break the balance. We must wait. Yet patience was not in the hearts of empires. Far away in the Nabari Dominion, warships already armed themselves. Their queen snarled that a mere human would never rise above her kind. She ordered fleets to march toward the human's world, vowing to rip the blade from his hands. Back at the temple, the human felt the blade humming. Not in sound, but in his chest. Like a second heartbeat, he swung at once, and the air itself bent, sparks trailing like shooting stars. The aliens watching took a step back, fear flashing in their eyes. For the sword was not heavy in his grip. It was alive. It wanted to move. It wanted to fight. And through it, he felt whispers. Memories not his own. Ancient battles long forgotten. Heroes who once held it, each one speaking through the glow of the weapon. The human did not yet understand what the sword wanted from him. But he knew this much. The galaxy had seen him, and it would come for him that night. The sky above the temple cracked with storm, not of rain or lightning, but of energy. Stars flickered unnaturally. Comets split apart. Even the moons shifted slightly in orbit. The shockwave of the blade's awakening continued to spread. Ships drifting in dark corners of space spun in sudden storms. Ancient guardians hidden in black holes turned their gaze outward. One by one, civilizations awoke, asking the same question: who is the human? But the man who held the blade was no king, no trained soldier, no commander of fleets. He was simply a traveler, a survivor, someone who had come searching for meaning. Now the galaxy placed him at the center of every eye. And though he stood quietly in the temple ruins, his name began to echo far away, carried on fear and hope alike. And somewhere in the endless void, a shadow stirred, a being older than any empire. Its prison cracked by the awakening of the blade. It smiled with hunger, for the galaxy had been silent for too long. And now a human had broken that silence. The shockwave had done more than announce a new wielder. It had awakened enemies no one wished to remember, and the man who carried the blade would soon learn that holding it was not a gift. It was a call to war, ChatGPT said. In the days that followed, the galaxy grew restless. Whispers filled the void between stars. Every system, every empire, every tribe spoke of the same impossible thing. The blade had chosen, and it had chosen a human. Alien leaders met in hidden chambers, fear boiling beneath their pride. Some argued the human must be hunted down, destroyed. Before his power spread, others saw opportunity, capture him, bind him, and use him as a weapon. Yet none of them trusted each other. For if one empire gained control of the blade-bearer, no other would survive. So fear spread faster than light. The human remained in the old temple, the sword always at his side. He did not sleep easily. When his eyes closed, visions filled him, flames across alien skies, vast fleets burning, broken worlds weeping, and always the same voice whispering, "You were chosen, not because of strength, but because you will not bend." He would wake sweating, gripping the hilt tighter. Not sure if the blade was guiding him or testing him, outside the temple, crowds of aliens gathered. Some came to kneel, calling him savior. Others came with stones, calling him cursed. Priests argued over the prophecy. Some claimed he would unite the galaxy. Others warned he would destroy it. The human heard their cries but said little. Silence became his shield. For he himself did not yet know what he was meant to be. One night, as the moons hung low, a group of alien envoys arrived. Tall figures robed in silver, faces hidden. They bowed before him, asking that he join their alliance. They promised him armies, ships, wealth beyond imagining, if only he fought. Under their banners, the human listened, his eyes calm, and when they finished, he asked a single question. "If the blade chose me, why do you think it would follow you?" The silence that followed was answer enough. The envoys left in shame, their promises falling to dust, but others were not so gentle. Assassins came in the dark, shadows with claws tipped in poison, their blades aimed for his heart. Yet the sword woke before he did, glowing bright, humming loud. The assassins froze, their weapons shattered, their bodies thrown back as if the air itself rejected them. When dawn came, their ashes lay at the temple gates, a warning for all who thought the human could be taken easily. Still, doubt filled him. He asked himself why. Why had this weapon chosen him? He had no empire, no throne, no army. Only a wandering soul. Yet the more he held it, the more he felt its weight was not of steel, but of choice. Every move he made now would echo across the galaxy, and he feared making the wrong step. Meanwhile, across the stars, empires shook. In the Vorath Council, warlords fought each other in rage, one demanding the human's death, another whispering of alliances in the Nabari Dominion. The Queen's ships already sailed, vast black fleets ready to crush the one who dared hold the blade, and in forgotten ruins, ancient machines stirred, their voices cold, repeating one truth: the wielder has returned, balance must be tested. The galaxy feared not just the sword, but what it meant. For if a human weak, soft, unworthy in alien eyes could rise higher than them all, then everything they believed about power was broken. Their bloodlines, their crowns, their ancient titles meant nothing. One human now stood where no alien could, and so the galaxy's fear grew into hatred. But beneath the hatred was also something else. A spark of hope in those who had lived under chains for too long. Oppressed tribes whispered his name. Slaves in dark mines sang of the blade-bearer. Broken soldiers dreamed that maybe this human would rise for them. The human did not yet see it. But in every corner of the galaxy, he had become more than a man. he was a symbol. One that made rulers tremble and the weak lift their heads again. He stood before the temple one evening, staring at the stars, the blade glowing softly at his side. He felt the galaxy's eyes upon him, billions of them, some filled with fear, some with faith, and he whispered into the night, "If this is my path, then let me walk it, even if I walk alone." But he would not walk alone for long. For armies were already marching, fleets already burning engines, and assassins sharpening new blades. The galaxy was preparing to test him. And the first storm was closer than he knew. The first battle did not come with warning. It came with fire. The sky above the old temple split open as alien warships descended. Black shapes blotting out the stars. Their engines roared like thunder. Their shadows fell across the mountains, and the ground shook as thousands of alien soldiers marched forward. The human stood at the temple steps, the blade resting in his hands. It hummed softly, alive, ready. The priests screamed for him to flee. The crowd scattered in terror, yet he did not move. He had seen visions of this moment in his restless dreams. He knew the galaxy would test him, and the test had finally come. The alien army that approached was vast, armored beasts with scales of iron. Their weapons glowing with energy, banners raised high, each one painted with the mark of the Nabari dominion their queen had sent them, determined to crush the blade-bearer before his legend spread. She did not send envoys, she sent executioners. At their head marched a general twice the height of a man, his body covered in jagged armor, his voice booming like metal on stone. He raised his spear and called out across the valley, "Human, your life ends here. The blade belongs to no outsider. Kneel and die quickly. Resist and suffer." The human gripped the sword tighter, his heart pounding, yet he did not kneel. He lifted the blade slowly, its glow rising brighter than the torches of the temple. The hum grew louder until the very stones beneath his feet trembled. He spoke no threats, no boasts, only silence. Yet his silence was louder than the general's roar. The first wave of soldiers charged, their claws and blades flashing. The human moved faster than even he thought possible. The sword cut through the air, and the air itself split. Shields cracked like glass, armor melted as if touched by the sun. The energy of the blade cut through matter, through light, through the very will of his enemies. One by one they fell, but more came. The battlefield burned. Yet the human did not falter. Each swing of the blade sent arcs of energy across the field. Soldiers were thrown back, weapons shattered, entire lines broken. Yet the human's body did not tire. The blade carried him, guiding his steps, his strikes, his breath, as if it fought alongside him. The general roared again, furious, and charged with his spear. The ground cracked beneath his feet. He swung with all his might. A blow that could break mountains. The human raised the blade and met him, light against darkness. The clash shook the valley. Mountains echoed with the sound. The spear snapped in half. The general staggered back, his armor smoking, his eyes wide with disbelief. Still he fought, striking again and again. But each time the sword cut him down, pieces of his armor falling away, until finally the human struck once more. The glow of the blade carving through both armor and flesh. The general fell to his knees, his voice trembling, worthy, before his body collapsed to ash. The battlefield fell silent. Thousands of alien soldiers stared at their fallen leader. Some dropped their weapons in terror. Others fled into the night. None dared move closer, for they had seen what no one believed possible. A single human standing against an army, holding a blade that shook the stars. The priests of the temple wept, their prophecy alive before their eyes. The crowd that had fled returned slowly, whispering his name. Some called him Savior, others called him Doom. But all knew one truth: nothing in the galaxy could remain the same. The human stood alone among the ruins of battle, his chest heaving, yet the sword still glowed strong. Its steady, its light unbroken. He looked down at the ashes of the general and the countless soldiers around him, and for the first time, he felt the true weight of what had begun. He was no longer a traveler, no longer just a man. He was now the blade bearer, the center of every war to come, above him. The alien warships began to retreat, their engines burning bright as they fled into the night sky. The queen of the Nabari Dominion would hear of her defeat, and she would not forget the galaxy had seen its first battle against the human. And the galaxy had lost, but the human knew this was only the beginning. For enemies would not stop here. They would come again, larger, stronger, more desperate, and each battle would test not just his strength, but his heart. He lowered the blade, the glow dimming to a soft light, and whispered to himself, "If I am worthy, then let me prove it," as the stars above burned brighter, watching, waiting for what would come next. The days after the battle were heavy with both silence and noise. Silence inside the temple where the humans sat, staring at the blade as if searching for answers, and noise outside as alien crowds swelled larger each sunrise. Some shouting praise, others spitting curses. Word of the general's death had raced across the stars. And now even those who once mocked the human whispered his name. The blade hummed softly, always warm in his grip. Always alive, but it carried weight heavier than steel. It whispered fragments of voices, warriors of ages past, memories of battles won and lost. And with each night, the human wondered if the sword was guiding him or if it was bending him to its will. It was then that betrayal crept close. Not from an enemy marching with banners, but from someone who had walked beside him, a figure he had trusted, a warrior who had sworn loyalty after the first battle. A tall alien with pale skin marked by scars, who had stood guard at the temple gates when others fled. The human had let him in, had believed in his words. For the alien spoke of freedom and justice, but envy burns hotter than loyalty. The alien watched the human each day, his eyes drawn not to the man, but to the blade. He dreamed of holding it, dreamed of empires bowing before him, his heart twisted by the thought that a human, weak and soft, held what he could not. One night, while the torches burned low and the priests slept, the traitor stepped into the temple, his hands trembling, his eyes locked on the sword. The human was asleep, the blade resting beside him, glowing faintly like a star at rest. The traitor whispered to himself, "It should have been me," as he reached for the hilt. The moment his skin touched the weapon, the silence shattered. Light erupted, searing and wild. The temple shook as if the stars themselves had fallen inside. The traitor screamed, his body twisting, burning. The sword rejected him, not just with fire but with fury. His flesh turned to ash, his armor to dust, until nothing remained but a shadow on the stone floor. The human awoke to the roar, the blade already in his hand. Its glow fierce, alive with rage. He looked down at the ashes, sorrow flickering in his eyes. He whispered, "You were my friend," but the blade hummed cold. Unfeeling, the priests rushed in, their faces pale, and one fell to his knees, crying. The sword chooses the heart, not the hand. News of the betrayal spread by dawn. The galaxy listened. Some rulers laughed, saying the human was doomed to stand alone, that even his allies would turn on him. Others grew more afraid, for they saw the sword's judgment was absolute. It could not be stolen, could not be forced, only accepted. The human stood before the crowds that morning, his voice steady, though his heart was heavy. He raised the blade high and spoke. "This weapon is not for greed, not for crowns. not for those who hunger for power. It is for those who will stand when all others run. His words carried, and though many did not believe. Those who were broken, those who had lived their lives under chains, felt hope burn inside them. But enemies heard too, and they did not hear hope, they heard challenge. The queen of the Nabari dominion sharpened her rage. The Vorath council whispered of new plots, and far across the void, the ancient shadow that had stirred grew stronger. Feeding on the chaos, that night, alone in the temple, the human sat with the blade. He whispered softly, "If you chose me, then I will not betray you. But do not betray me either." The blade hummed in reply, steady, alive. Its light casting his shadow long across the stone. And in that shadow was the shape of the wars to come, for the galaxy had seen his strength. It had seen betrayal burned to ash, and now every empire knew one truth. The sword could not be stolen, it could only be followed. And that made the human more dangerous than any fleet. The galaxy could no longer ignore him. Everywhere his name spread like fire. Some spoke it with hope, others with hate, but no one stayed silent. The human with the blade had become more than a man. He was a storm waiting to break, on the edge of forgotten worlds. Alien slaves whispered his story. Miners deep beneath molten rock paused their endless digging and repeated the tale. One human lifted the blade, one human struck down armies. Their chains felt lighter when they spoke it, in broken cities where tyrants ruled. Rebels painted his image on walls, a lone figure holding a sword of light, the symbol of resistance. The human did not ask for followers, yet they came, first in small groups. A wounded soldier who had lost his people. A mother who carried her starving child. A band of young aliens too tired of fear. They came to the temple gates, bowing not to him, but to the blade. Asking to fight by his side. At first he told them no. He feared their deaths would weigh heavier. Then victory, but the blade hummed in his hand, as if urging him to look closer. He saw not weakness, but courage in their eyes. And he understood the sword had chosen him. But hope had chosen them, so he let them stay. Word reached the empires, and panic spread. The Vorath lords argued louder than ever. Some demanded a fleet to crush this uprising before it grew. Others hissed that killing him might fulfill the prophecy faster. In the Nabari dominion, the queen screamed in fury as she heard reports of her soldiers defecting, whispering the human's name instead of hers. She swore she would drag him in chains across her palace floor. Yet, even as enemies gathered, his followers grew. Small ships arrived. Each day, broken fleets carrying banners of surrender. Tribes who had been enemies for centuries now stood together. United not by blood, but by one man holding one sword. The galaxy had never seen such a thing. The first true uprising began on the planet Taros, where the Dominion had ruled with iron. For generations, the human walked at the front of the march. The blade glowing like a star, behind him thousands followed. Alien voices chanting not his name, but the word worthy. The Dominion sent soldiers. Tanks, war machines, their weapons filled the skies with fire. Yet the human did not waver. When the blade rose, light spread across the battlefield. Their machines fell, their soldiers fled, and for the first time in living memory, Taros was free. News raced faster than light. One victory became 10. 10 became 100. Everywhere the human went, people rose. Armies who had never met each other fought side by side. Empires that had seemed eternal began to crack. But power has a cost. Each battle left scars on him. His body bore burns and wounds that healed slowly. His eyes grew heavier with the faces of the fallen. Those who believed in him and did not live to see tomorrow, the blade never dimmed. But in the quiet moments he wondered, was he guiding the sword, or was the sword guiding him? And still, greater storms gathered, the ancient fleets of the Vorath. stirred massive ships older than civilizations themselves. Their weapons capable of burning entire worlds. They did not come for negotiation. They came to end him. Across the galaxy, their engines burned. And their lords swore the uprising would die in one stroke. Yet the oppressed did not falter on planets where rebellion had never been whispered. Banners rose overnight. The human had given them more than a weapon. He had given them the belief that their chains could break in the temple. Before leaving for the greatest battles yet, he stood alone, the blade resting against the stone altar. He whispered, "I never asked for this, but if I must carry it, then I will carry it for them." The blade answered with a hum so deep it shook the walls, as if the sword itself agreed. The uprising was no longer a spark. It had become a fire. Across the stars, and the human walked at the center of it. Not a king, not a conqueror, but a man with a blade that had chosen him. And through him, it had chosen the galaxy itself. And in the dark beyond the stars, the ancient shadow smiled. Wider, for it fed on war, and the human, unknowingly, had lit the galaxy aflame. The galaxy burned with war, fleets shattered across starlight seas, armies rose and fell in endless waves. And always at the center of it stood the human with the blade. He had become more than warrior, more than leader. To some, he was savior. To others, he was curse, yet none could deny he was the turning point of an age. But the war was not done. The ancient prophecy had not ended. For in the heart of the empire, on a throne carved from the bones of 1,000 worlds, sat the last enemy, the emperor who claimed the galaxy by blood. His voice carried across stars, declaring the human nothing but a thief, a pretender. He promised that when they met, the blade would bow to its rightful master. The human knew he could not turn away. He led the uprising to the gates of the emperor's world. His fleets battered, his allies weary, yet their eyes still shone with faith. For they had seen him stand alone against armies. They had seen the blade split the skies. Now they believed he could end even an emperor. The final march was long. The world of the emperor bristled with weapons, towers taller than mountains, walls layered with shields of energy, fleets circled above like vultures. Yet the people rose inside the city itself, slaves casting down chains, children painting his symbol on broken walls. The uprising had reached even here. The human walked into the throne room alone, the blade glowing faint at his side. The hall stretched wide, lined with statues of past rulers, and at the far end sat the emperor, armored in black, his crown gleaming with jewels ripped from dying stars. His eyes burned with pride and hatred. The emperor stood, his voice echoing, "You think a human can rule what my blood has ruled for 10,000 years? You think the blade belongs to you? No, it was meant for me. Give it to me now, and I may let you die quickly." The human said nothing. He raised the blade, and its glow filled the hall. Brighter than any jewel, brighter than the crown itself. The emperor roared and drew his own weapon, a spear forged from the core of a dead sun. The clash shook the throne room, blow after blow, strike after strike. The battle raged. The emperor was strong, faster than any foe before. His spear struck with the weight of worlds. Yet the human did not fall. Each strike of the blade burned brighter. Sparks flew like stars. The statues of old rulers cracked and toppled. The throne itself split. The hall became battlefield and grave. The emperor sneered, "The blade does not belong to you. It belongs to power, and I am power." He lunged, the spear aimed at the human's heart. But the blade rose in answer, not just in his hand, but in his will. Their weapons clashed one final time. The shockwave tore through the palace. The windows exploded, and the sky above split open with light. When the smoke cleared, the emperor knelt, his spear shattered, his crown fallen, his chest pierced by the glow of the blade. His voice broke into a whisper, not by birth, but by choice, and he crumbled into dust, his throne empty. The hall fell silent. The galaxy itself seemed to pause. The human stood alone, the blade still burning in his hand. He looked at the empty throne, then slowly lowered the weapon. His voice steady. I will not sit there. I am not here to rule. I am here to protect. Those words spread across the stars, carried by every voice that had once whispered his name. The empires that had feared him bowed, not to a conqueror, but to a protector. The oppressed stood tall. Free at last, the galaxy had been shaken, and it would never return to what it was. The human walked from the throne room, the blade at his side. Its glow softer now, as if resting. He did not smile, he did not cheer. He only breathed deeply, for he knew this was not the end. Shadows still stirred in the dark. Enemies yet unseen would rise. But he also knew the galaxy had seen the truth, that worth was not in blood, not in crowns, not in alien pride, but in courage, in choice. And with that choice, one human with one blade had shaken the galaxy forever.